Hey there. I wanted to share about going on a cruise recently and how I was able to stay on my whole food, plant-based diet, which also includes being what we call SOS free, salt, oil, and sugar. So I keep those to a minimum or eliminate them altogether. I will say the Royal Caribbean offered a vegan option at every meal for all the courses. So bravo to them. And they also offered, not on the menu, but they also offered a Indian, vegan, and vegetarian option at all the meals. For breakfast, I would have the oatmeal. It wasn't the greatest oatmeal. It made me understand why some people hate oatmeal and say it's a horrible texture. It didn't taste like my oatmeal at home, which is delicious. And it was plain, so that was important. So it's plain oatmeal, and I added raisins and slivered almonds. At breakfast, they also had sauteed mushrooms, and they were not dripping in oil. And they also had baked beans, which I presume had some sugar in them. So I wasn't able to stay perfectly on SOS, but I could certainly eat no dairy, no meat, no eggs. So I was able to stay on plan in that way. At breakfast, they also had plenty of fruits. Hand fruits like oranges and apples and pears. They cut up fruit, lovely pineapple, melon, kiwi, figs. Really nice selection of fruit, very fresh. They also had grapefruits that were cut in half and segmented. They weren't perfectly segmented, but they were grapefruit, and it was lovely, and it was a lovely presentation. At lunch, they only offer the buffet version of eating, and they would have things like squash soup. They had a taco bar one day, and I was excited about the taco bar because it had black beans. But the black beans were very soupy. It was like 3 beans per cup. But they were black beans, and I was grateful for it. They also had, as one of the options, corn tortillas in addition to the flour tortillas. So I like that because the corn is less processed than the white flour tortillas. So that was my choice on the whole food, plant-based, SOS-free, low-processed food. And so lunch was good, always serviceable. They would often have, and I started to catch on, they would always have that Indian vegan option at lunchtime too on the buffet. You just had to kind of look for it and know where to find it, but I started to catch on, they had those there. In the evening, I chose to do the sit-down dining. You could also do the buffet. I did the sit-down dining. And again, they would always have vegan for the appetizer. So I had minestrone soup or a lentil soup, something like that. They were good. And then they would have a vegan entree. So the vegan entrees were included bolognese, a lentil bolognese on spaghetti, or they had the thinly sliced eggplant wrapped around whole wheat couscous that was wonderfully presented. So they always had these options. They were lovely in their presentation, and some thought went into them, like the eggplant. That's not just standard stuff. The spaghetti bolognese, okay. However, they were always pretty bland. So the good news about bland is it means they're not putting in the salt, oil, and sugar to get to a flavor profile. And in hindsight, I would have taken some of my own spices on the cruise and just had them in my pocket and whipped out those and put them on and taken it to a level where I really liked it. I was excited to get turned on to the secret Indian menu that was off menu, because those choices were nicely flavored, in my opinion. They were not too spicy. They were spicy to me, but not too spicy. That was perfect, and I really enjoyed those. And they were always served with the basmati rice, and you would get 2 cups of an Indian dish, kind of a curry of some variety. So between the vegan dish and the mainstream vegan dish and the Indian dish, I would get both of those, and it would be enough food for me because, as many of us know, you have to be a high volume eater when you're eating fruits and vegetables and plant-based food to get to your calories. And they would always have a dessert, a vegan type dessert, so it was like an oatmeal bake on fruit that was good. Again, there was sugar involved. But to my taste, it didn't taste like I was biting into a straight sugar dessert. So, was I able to eat on plan, on whole food, plant-based? Pretty close. I know there was oil, I know there was sugar, I know there was salt, but it wasn't tons and tons like I find at most restaurants, frankly. And the hardest part is really just that you're in a very standard American diet context. There's pizza and hot dogs and hamburgers and chicken nuggets and all that fun stuff all around you at every meal in unlimited supply. So I'm at a point in my journey where I'm pretty good. I enjoy the food that I'm eating. I wasn't there to be on a food binge. I was there to enjoy it, my family, and an 80th birthday, and it worked out perfectly for that. And the pizza was a little tempting, I'm not going to lie, but it didn't look so good that I couldn't resist it. So I did not eat the pizza. But it is something to keep in mind. A lot of sugary drinks, alcohol. So it's the context. Do I prefer a trip where I'm in total control of my food? Sure. But that wasn't this trip. And so I was grateful that Royal Caribbean had all the vegan options. The waiter was well knowledgeable in them. One more thing I want to tell you is interesting that the food that's served in the sit-down dining is essentially the same food that is in the buffet dining. And I tried both. And for me, I really learned that buffet dining isn't for me anymore. I just had this feeling of, oh, I'm missing something. I need to get one more thing. Is there something else out there that I'm not getting? And I definitely ate more than I wanted to or needed to on the buffet. Whereas the sit-down dining, you sit, the meal is presented to you in front of you. That is the portion. I'm able to focus on my family and being in the moment much more. And I didn't have that sort of underlying anxiety of, what am I missing? So it was a nice experiment for me. And I decided that buffet dining is not for me anymore. I was a buffet queen for many years. I loved a buffet. So that was just an interesting finding. You might let me know what you think of that, if you find buffet struggle or you like it. One other thing I learned when I shared this in a Facebook group is that there are cruises that specialize in whole food plant-based. There's one that leaves out of Miami every year in March, and I checked that out and looked really interesting. So I recommend that you look at that too, because then you're all whole food plant-based, and the whole cruise is not that. So you can take family members who don't eat that way, and there'll be food that they prefer. And so I thought that was interesting, that there are cruises that offer that. So that's my experience with eating whole food plant-based on a cruise. Thanks.